Welcome to the 2020 Ramble and Ride virtual tour of Old Town, in particular McDonald Drive. My name's Wayne Guy of Guy Architects, and we will be doing a tour starting at the street along Dancing Moose all the way down to Weaver and DeVore. So come on and let's go and look forward to sharing a little of my part of town with you. So the first stop on our tour is 3502 McDonald Drive. Behind me, a scheme designed by architect Gino Pin. You'll notice the gray siding. It's a zinc siding that is adhered with fasteners that are exposed for a very interesting look. The siding sort of buckles, which is called oil canning, but in the light it looks like waves of the water, and it's quite a nice effect. You'll also notice that the building sort of blends into the rock and exposes some of the structural elements, such as the cantilevered joists on the eaves. Notice circular holes in the side of the facade. Those were called pinholes, named after the architect Gino Pin, and they are for ventilation in the winter. They're modified portholes, which were originally intended for boats, but work very well in buildings in this climate. Welcome to the next stop on our trip. This is the Dancing Moose Cafe, 3505 McDonald Drive. The Dancing Moose was originally owned by the Bryants and was a B&B, also a nice restaurant. It's been since taken over by John and Deb, who have a lovely restaurant here, and also have done this addition on the front, which Guy Architects did. We put a vertical element to connect the B&B to the dining room, as well as a shake look, which was the siding pattern that you see there. It's actually a cementatious shakes, so you'll never have to paint them again. It was a nice little intervention on a building that was essentially a flat facade to create a sense of entry and a lovely venue for eating on the waterfront. Welcome to the next stop on our trip, 3510 McDonald Drive, or the home of Old Town Glassworks. Old Town Glassworks was started quite a while ago and has become a Yellowknife establishment. Owned by Matthew Dragono and his co-op. They've been turning out wonderful glass work based on sort of found and recycled bottles. Also, he has a bike repair and sales outfit in the back, so if you need transportation, come on down. Why I bring attention to this building from an architectural point of view, though, is notice the tar roof siding and actually the asbestos shakes. This is one of the last vernacular buildings in this part of town that has the existing look as it would have looked back in the 50s. So it just goes to show how effective adaptive reuse or using older structures for new purposes can be. So on to the next. Welcome to the next stop on our tour, 3512 McDonald Drive. Designed by Guy Architects about 10 years ago, so about 2010. The whole purpose of this building was to explore modular for multifamily residential. There are 3 units in this building, including something that we developed called a lantern tower. It extends up on the roof, which gives you access to the flat roof of this building, giving you a wonderful 360 panoramic view of Yellowknife Bay. The building itself was erected in 24 hours, so we brought the modules in. We had them fabricated in Alberta. They arrived on site, and over one day and the next morning we erected the whole building. This building then served as a prototype for other multifamily residential buildings we did, such as the Cabo condominium complex in Yellowknife on Niven, off of Niven. So I'll bring your attention to the composition. As you see, it's a composition of squares. The big red square is that lantern tower that's facing north, so it creates a nice microenvironment on the roof, sheltering it from the wind but exposed to the sun. And also we have this big silver square, we have the big blue square, and the little yellow square in the back that you can see. Now what's interesting, I like the idea of sort of Renaissance design, and perfect proportions were very important in Renaissance design. And what we did is essentially use the Fibonacci series, or it's also called the golden section, to ratio the squares at a precise ratio of 1.67. So each of the squares are 1.67 times bigger than the smallest square. So it creates a lovely pattern, and probably more noticeable in winter when the trees aren't in foliage and you can see the north elevation of the building. So let's go to our next building. Our next stop is 3514. Welcome to 3514 McDonald Drive. This building, we did a light reno on it because the siding was quite old. And what we did is put this corrugated galvalume siding, which is facing southeast. So it reflects the light on this deck, and it's a wonderful space to hang out, especially in the spring and fall where we have slightly inclement weather. So there's a little gem next door that I want to show you. This is one of the last shacks in Old Town. It's been inhabited since probably the early 70s, where another architect who now lives in Whitehorse used to live, Tim Turner Davis. And the building has gone through several different renovations. And I think it's probably the smallest building ever to be featured in the magazine Canadian Architect, as we used many of sort of the local found things to ornament the building. We have a siding, as you see, that's horizontal and spaced with airspace behind it to serve as a rain screen. So it protects the building facade from the sun, but allows wind to come through and dry out the facade. What that does, though, is that if you notice the color, that vibrant orange, it's really the color of a lovely early summer sunrise. And I remember I was out here about 5 in the morning, and the sun was just coming up in the northeast, and that whole rock was the same color as that building. So when everybody thinks about the north, they think, oh, maybe it should be beige or green, but the north, for buildings that really belong, need those vibrant colors that reflect the wonderful palette that nature gives us up here. So if it comes down to your place, don't be afraid to use color. It is a lovely tool, and especially with the long winters we have, it really serves as a very invigorating component to any architectural piece. So welcome to 3520 McDonald Drive. This building was originally designed by a Guy Architects in the early 90s, but we did an addition of a deck to make a 3-season room. Though the room's unheated, through passive solar design and using ceramic tiles on the floor, it really keeps warm well into October, and you can use it pretty well in shirt sleeves starting in March. So this is, again, we looked at the composition of the siding, the location of the windows to make this little gem of a piece that sort of sits in front of the principal building. It has a wonderful view of Yellowknife Bay, and 80% of really great architecture is taking advantage of views, sun, and avoiding the detrimental aspects of cold winds and snow. So this building and the addition attempts to do that, and in the process adding a wonderful outdoor space to the existing residence. So welcome to 3522 McDonald Drive. This building was designed, I believe, by FSC Rod Kirkwood, probably in the early 90s. The nice thing about Old Town, there's a zoning down here called Old Town Mix, which enables you to do industrial and residential side by side, which I think is a wonderful zoning mix, because you don't get a bedroom community. People work and live in the same neighborhood. You don't have to do a commute, and it creates activity both during the days and in the evenings. So Rod used a very industrial aesthetic here with the corrugated metal siding, the sort of express post and beam components for the balcony support, as well as a sliding door. And this was originally, I believe, a carpentry shop. So that sliding door was crucial to get the materials in that the carpenter needed to work, as downstairs was a workshop and upstairs was the residential component. So this is part of our Yellowknife experience as planes taking off in the bay. And it's a lovely part of that Old Town mix use I was telling you about, where we had industrial on the waterfront and residential a little further back. Some of the history of Old Town is really important to know because Pilot's Monument was essentially downtown Yellowknife back in about 1939, probably through the 40s. And Yellowknife didn't have a road to the mid-60s, so everything that came through, came to town, came via the Great Slave Lake through Fort Smith. So the government dock and the waterfront here was how you got your supplies in after a long winter. So that's why things such as the bear barge are celebrated, because it was the first, beer and other produce that were received after the long winter. And by that time, people were extremely tired of canned food. So this sort of harks back to that old industrial route where this is not a suburb like any other suburb in town. It's really sort of a working neighborhood where a lot of businesses are interlaid with residential components, making for a fabulous place to live. Highly recommended for those of you considering Old Town as your destination. So welcome to 3526 McDonald Drive. This house was the first house I built in Yellowknife, and this was built probably about 1992. What was interesting is I had just renovated an office uptown, and the day I finished the renovation, it was an old 1960s bungalow, the landlord came in and said, "Oh, by the way, in a week you guys have to move out because that's where the Joe Toby building is going and we're demoing these 3 buildings." I said, "Well, geez, I put a lot of money into this place. I tell you what, the building on the corner, which was the old Diet Center back in the 80s, I said, give me that building and, we'll sort of call it square." And he says, "Well, as long as it's off the lot by Saturday, the building's yours." So I scrambled, found this lot here, and a friend of mine and I then sort of put together the financing to go essentially develop the property. So what happened, we got the old building where the Joe Toby building is. We, in true Yellowknife fashion, where recycling is very big, we put it on a flatbed truck, rolled it down to Old Town, and I had to go to the beach because it was too nerve-wracking. The wheels of the flatbed were coming off the ground because big building, small trailer. And but sure enough, at the end of the day, the building was on site. So what we did is we built a new first floor, and then we took a crane, took the old part of the building, and then hoisted it up and plopped it on top, which meant we had quite an intricate beam system to support the new structure on top. But to do the demolition, it was actually 3 1940 sheds. And so when the crane started to lift it, I noticed some of the buildings were coming apart. So I said, wait a sec. So we actually took off some of the siding to find that it was 3 1940 sheds. And there was not a stitch of insulation in the sheds. So we basically saved the framing. That's what we did. So good lesson there. But anyway, we re-insulated it, reclad it, and created a brand new well-insulated structure for both units. So that's the story of 3522. And as the family grew, we sort of moved to other houses, but this one will always have a special place in my heart. Let's go on. Welcome to 3528 McDonald Drive. This is the home of Guy Architects. We sort of bought a mechanical shop about 10 years back and renovated it. It was originally dark, very, it was an industrial space. So what we did, we put this polycarbonate door here, which allows tons of light, and we did a little pattern in blue, clear, and red to create wonderful light coming through because it has a southeast exposure, so it gets wonderful morning light. And it's our only window, so in summer, if we want, we can open this up and have a lovely breeze through the office. To lighten up the inside space, we put a nice high gloss yellow epoxy flooring on the concrete slab, which really lifted a lot of the feeling of the space and makes for a very delightful office environment. Uh, this again is an example of adaptive reuse as the neighborhood sort of evolves from industrial to industrial, commercial, office, and residential. These types of reuses, especially with old steel buildings that have really a lovely 100-year life, are really a good adaptation and make for wonderful tall ceilings and great work environments. So let's go on to some more adaptive reuse projects. So welcome to what used to be the old dinosaur museum. This building was originally owned by John MacDonald, and John A, as we used to call him, was one of the first and pioneer of the houseboat community back in the late 70s with building, I always call it the old Mother Hubbard shoe, but it's called Icarus. I think Icarus 3 now, owned by Matthew Gregono out in the harbor. This building has gone through many renovations. It used to be in the 60s and 70s a garage. Then it turned into a dinosaur museum. Then the Nut Hut was here for a while. And now it's primarily residential. Guy Architects did a renovation on this building. That's because the siding on the south side was old and leaking. And so we introduced this very vibrant red siding. So it's sort of a greeting as you come down to McDonald, almost the gate of McDonald Drive, and also again reflects some of the marvelous colors that we get up here. We use the same rain screen principle, so the siding actually has a little gap in it to allow air to breathe behind it, so the wood dries out. Wood doesn't rot if you let it breathe. And it also, because the front of the building was shiplap material, when you have shiplap, and I don't know if you can see, you get a little shadow below the shiplap. And what our little 1/4-inch space does is replicate that shiplap. So even though we used 1x8 stained spruce, it looks like shiplap cedar. And so it's a very economical siding, but one, if you detail it well, will last as long as the building. So we had a lot of fun with it, and it's really created a lovely backdrop for all the activities that happen here on the government dock. And talking about government dock, it's record high water levels, so you guys should come down, look at it. I don't recommend you drive through. It's a pretty hectic there, but if you have small kids, great dipping pool. So I refer to it as Yellowknife's infinity pool. So come down and enjoy the waterfront, especially now that the waterfront's now on land. So welcome to 3541 McDonald Drive. This building, like true Yellowknife tradition, used to be somewhere else. It was here, not here, back in the early days. For those of you who know, it was the Yellowknife's original theater, except it's back to front. The back is now facing McDonald, and the front's facing the water. And we're going to go see that in a moment. What's interesting is that I was here in '78 when they moved the building down, and it's a rather large building, as you can see. They had to remove all the overhead lines to make accommodation for the move of the building, but it was moved very successfully and used to be where the new Scotiabank is. So for you guys, you can imagine this building on Scotiabank with the old facade that we'll see, the western facade facing Franklin. So let's go take a look at that. And prior to that, just to let you know, in true Old Town tradition, it's multi-use, so residential upstairs and offices and commercial downstairs, creating a lovely mix of uses for this part of town. So let's go take a look at the old front. So welcome to the back of the front of the building. So this was the original facade on Franklin, where the Scotia Centre now lies. This was Yellowknife's first downtown cinema, I believe. And so if you can imagine the movie theater, this is where you went. You can tell it's got the old false facade. It's a very Western architectural thing. You'll see it in a lot of old Westerns. This one was, in this case, stuccoed. but the large windows and the large square facade sort of hides the pitch roof behind. And it was architecture that was meant to make the building look more commercial. So they used a residential type construction, but put a false facade on front. Just to make it more imposing and give it more frontage on the street. So, as I mentioned earlier, this building was moved down in '78 from the site of the Scotia Centre to here, and so quite a journey. And it landed peacefully in the old town here and continues to serve the community very well. So let's go to our last project of the tour, and I think you're going to enjoy this. So welcome to the last building on our stop. This is the Weaver and DeVore company. They've been in existence, probably one of the first businesses going up here in Yellowknife. I think they've been in operation since the 40s, if not the late 30s. And what was interesting is that this was a typical vernacular of all the buildings, meaning when I say vernacular, it's the way things are built in a certain region. And if you look at old Yellowknife photos from the 50s, all the buildings are white. Well, this was why they were white. It was actually asbestos paper that was used roofing nails to sort of hold it on and creates this lovely pattern. And as it ages, it turns black. So you get this lovely mottled pattern of white and black, white being the original color of the material and black the weathered material. It's also, in the old days, it would have been skirted in a bright color for the eaves and the gables, with probably painted doors that had a good accent. Since then, Weaver sort of has their workshop, their main store down here, which is on Weaver Drive, that comes out of Wiley that way. And then as we go over, there's Bullocks across the way, another Old Town business that has been in operation for over 20 years and has great fish, highly recommended. They're reopened now, so do drop in. And also, as you go up the hill, this is the old Yellowknife downtown area in Old Town, where that was the main drag going over the hill. And what's interesting is that a lot of the houses, you'll see the cedar shaped house at the top. That was designed by Barry Ward, another architect in Yellowknife. Barry and I just happened to go to school together many moons ago at Carleton University. And it seems a lot of the Carleton architects ended up in Yellowknife. We also have the Drinnan's house, the lovely green sort of white trimmed house there. And it sort of moves up the hill, and it's massing. The way it's put together really works with the hill, and it's very sympathetic to the hill. It doesn't dominate Pilot's Monument. And then going back, of course, Pilot's Monument, which is the old pinnacle of downtown Yellowknife, or Old Town Yellowknife. And what was interesting is that the Pilot's Monument, the light indicates when planes are coming in. So if you see it blinking, keep your eye out for float planes, because that means they're either taking off or landing. So they're cautionary lights for boaters in the harbor, just to make sure that they're aware of the traffic coming and going, since Old Town and the strait between Jolliffe Island and Pilot's Monument is actually called an aerodrome. It's an official landing spot. So it's been a lot of fun giving you this tour of Yellowknife's Old Town, in particular McDonald Drive. Do come down and enjoy Ramble and Ride. Even though it's virtual this year, a lot of the businesses will be open, and the same hospitality holds true. So we'll be doing many events over the holidays, or over the long weekend in August, but most of it will be online. So go to our website, check out what's happening, and I believe we are doing a bike rally as well. So on behalf of Guy Architects and the Old Town Community Association, of which I am a board member, We welcome you to the Old Town. Enjoy your holidays. Make this summer count. And even with COVID and the restrictions, there is still a lot of fun and outdoor fun to be had. So enjoy, and look forward to seeing you down in our part of town. Take care.